on to your seats. We got a good one today on Transition Talks Masterclass. We have someone who is very special to me. I've known him for over 25 years. Just listen to some of the accomplishments that he has. He is a professional actor. He is actually a licensed and trained barber. He's been to fire school. He's really lived a lot of the life that many people dream about, making the fullest of every opportunity that's been provided to him. Also a college graduate. We're going to talk about all of these different things, the how, the when, the why, behind the scenes with, all the way from Atlanta, Georgia, professional actor DuJan Cole.
Thank you, Herb, man. Thank you, Big Business, for allowing me to be here today, man. It's a pleasure. Anytime that I get a chance to come home, regardless of doing here, whether it's going to the doctor appointment or just seeing my family or just hanging out and having a good time, it's always good to be home, man. So I appreciate you for inviting me out.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Because I believe that your story is one that many people may be inspired from.
Right.
Because there's several transitions that you had to go through to get to the point that you're at.
Yeah.
So I'm going to jump right into it. I'm going to start with the how.
Okay.
Because I know that you've had situations where you kind of battled identifying yourself with the profession before figuring out what you were as a person.
Right.
So, I need the people to know that this is not a planned. Every response that you get isn't authentic. We didn't rehearse this.
Right.
How were you able to overcome the depression and the labels put on you so you could grow into who you are today?
That's a funny question to ask, not in the sense of because it's a bad question, but funny in the sense of that question has migrated over the years. I think that when we first met each other, you were a teenager, I was not quite a teenager yet. We grew up in the same church. So at that particular point in time, our path is thrusted upon us, whatever our nurtured behaviors is. One of the things that I talk about in my book that I wrote was nature versus nurture, and having that kind of a response and that kind of approach to it. It's when you're younger, it's more of a nurture deal. You do this, you go do that, and it's more do as I say and not as I do kind of deal. And I think that was the first stigma that I had to get over. It being not something that was forced upon me or thrusted upon me, it's something that I actually chose.
Right. Very, very, very relatable, because I think we all come in with expectations.
Yeah.
Expectations from the world, expectations from our parents, expectations based upon how we look, how tall we are.
Mm-hmm.
People start saying things like, you look like you'd be a good basketball player. You look like you'd be a good fireman, police officer. But very rarely do people say you look like you would be great.
Right.
Greatness is not based upon a profession. It's based upon a state of mind, a mindset. So, and we judge them from different milestones.
Right.
And you had the fortune of having a milestone by being on Chicago PD.
Right.
For those who haven't seen Chicago PD, that's a nationally syndicated show that's on NBC.
Right.
This is the type of show that literally hundreds of people actually audition for, and we're only talking about maybe a handful actually get to the final cut.
Right.
But then when you get to the final cut, you still may not make the cut.
Right. You can get stomped out, or not stomped out, but basically get cut out of an episode, depending on the importance of that particular role or whatnot. So yeah, you're absolutely right. It is a milestone in that sense, and that's funny that you asked about that particular transition, because you know my story, but other people don't. That was in 2019.
Sure.
And by 2019, I had already been to the military. I was in the Army. I had already graduated college the long way. It took me 16 years to get my bachelor's degree. I had to really want it to go back that many times to get it done. I had just did a play. It was a lot of little different milestones that you had to cross over in order to get to that particular point before you say, I got me something now.
Right.
And that was that whole moment of putting your head down and doing the work.
Sure.
You know what I mean? If I were a theologian, I would refer to it as my Ruth mentality.
Okay.
The story of Boaz and Ruth. Everybody, you hear so many times, regardless of gender, so many people talking about they want their prized possession or their prized mate or whatever the case may be, but you got to have that Ruth type of work ethic. Because Ruth like had already had a husband, lost a husband, was taking care of a mother-in-law and all this other stuff. And she was like, yo, I gotta get the work done. So she put her head down. And she didn't lift her head up until somebody had sent for her and said, hey, the person that's in charge want to have a meeting with you.
Right.
You know, and that's the root type of work ethic that you want to have. Like you want to have that root ethic to be like, when it's time, when Eric LaSalle comes and says, yo, you my guy.
Right.
That was my Boaz in a sense. Like he was my Boaz saying, yo, you my guy, I like what you do.
Right.
Come and do that here for me.
Absolutely.
You know.
And for those of you who don't know Eric LaSalle was on. He's a director. He actually was on Coming to America as one of the main characters. He also directed some episodes of ER as well. Just a great influence and a pioneer in many facets, because everybody who is accomplished isn't always in front of the camera.
Right.
It's a struggle to get to being in front of the camera, because you have people who are, the person who's in charge of the sound, the set design, all these different things.
Right.
And all of these people have to learn what looks good. Even before we did this, we had conversations about how does the sound look? How do we need to pan in? These are the types of things that people don't necessarily study when they go into a craft.
Right.
They just want the stage.
Right.
And I like how you reference the work ethic. You have to put in the work regardless of who's watching.
Right.
That is not an overnight success story. Most people who are successful literally have to go for years and years and years, and some don't even get to the point that you actually achieved.
Right.
So that was about an 8 to 10 year journey even to get to that point.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Doing the work is so important. So I'm going to get to the when question, because a lot, again, is mindset and mentality when you approach things.
Right.
And I want the people to understand this. That mentality has a lot to do with everything. It's not that you're missing something, it's that you're missing the mentality to get what you want.
Right.
My question to you, sir, is when did you know that you would refuse to be eliminated?
When did I know? Honestly, I don't think that I ever knew. Even now, like dealing with the work now and having the success now, I don't think I ever really knew. And I think that's also a part of the motivation behind it as well, too. I was talking to another one of my really good friends, one of my best friends, actually, just before we got on camera and everything. And I was telling him that, like, I had to change my motivation. My motivation in nature, my nature behavior was to always to prove somebody else wrong versus just proving myself right.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So the motivation had to change. The problem with proving somebody is wrong is it's always predicated on the outcome. And the only thing that proving somebody wrong actually does is yielding your power. Because all they have to do is just be opposed to what you do.
Sure.
They don't have to invest nothing else other than you done did all of this work, you done put your head down, you done did all of this stuff, and when you lift your head up and say, hey, am I good now? They go, nah, not yet. So changing the motivation of proving somebody wrong and just proving myself right
there you go.
is the right way. It's a different way of making yourself accountable, holding yourself accountable, being responsible and all sorts of stuff. That's what the key is, like changing your purpose. It's a physical, it's like physics. Like object that is moving, it's the object is not moving, it's everything else that's around it. It's your perspective.
Sure.
So, like, changing your perspective from proving somebody wrong to just proving yourself right is a strong key to success.
And the thing about doing the work, like we were saying, for some people, this conversation may be a little bit broad. So I want to make sure people understand the work that you've done.
Right.
You've read countless books. You wrote your own book.
Right.
Actually talking about some of the experiences that you've had throughout life and how you had to grow into the person that you have become.
Right.
And growth has to do with intentionally giving yourself things that you need.
Right.
So obviously if a plant's going to grow, they got to give themselves water, sunlight. They have to protect themselves from outside influences. And that's what partially you have done. And I know that's a difficult thing because we as humans, we're interactive creatures.
Very much
we
so.
want to be in a situation where we feel like we belong.
Right.
But when you refuse to be eliminated, it's refusing to be associated with normal habits and behaviors.
Correct.
So that is going to be a different experience. And I know your experience really had some people at times looking at you like, why are you doing this?
Yeah.
Why are you doing this? I don't understand why.
Right.
So we discussed the how, we discussed the why. The when. When did you refuse to be eliminated? We went there. So the last question I have for you is, why do you think you're here? And what do you think is supposed to happen when you're here on this journey called the Lord?
Well, why do I think I'm here? I've answered this question so many different ways, and over time, just over these last 10 years, I've answered that question so many different ways. But the one thing that always resounds back to me is a question or an answer that I gave when somebody asked me, why do I want to be an actor? And I was like, it's quite this simple. My life goal is to be an activist. My career goal is to be an actor. So, but both of those words start with ACT, which in order you have to do something. So my life purpose is to do something. To do something to leave my legacy behind, and whatever that legacy may be. And
Sure.
I think that so many times we get lost in trying to figure out or try to identify or define what our legacy is,
Sure.
versus just saying, hey, my legacy could be just to do the work.
There you go.
And in understanding and identifying what the work actually is. And the work that brings you the most fulfillment is your gift. And
Sure.
that's what we got to focus on. So I think that my actual goal in life is to be a joy seeker.
That's deep, y'all. That's deep. A lot of times we respond and react to what we feel life has given us.
Right.
But if you really think about it, I mean, look around us. It's a beautiful day outside. It's not raining. We're here in good health. We have our arms, legs. There's some people right now who are not alive. When we focus on things, and what we focus on grows.
Right.
If you want to focus on what we don't have, we won't have what we have longer,
Right.
because we're not going to take care of what we have. When we're feeding ourselves the nourishment we need to grow,
Right.
and as you said, act, whether that means do the work, whether that means take care of yourself in order to do the work.
Right.
These things are very important. This is good stuff. And I'm really going to have to think very hard if we need more of these types of conversations, because generally what I've experienced, you can tell me your experience, most people don't have the ability to discuss vulnerable topics with some of their friends or people who are close to them because they were identified as a weakness.
Correct. Agreed. I think that was one of the biggest struggles that we have, especially as black men. I'm not trying to separate or ostracize any other community or population of people out there, but when it comes to specifically black men, like when it comes to our emotional state and our mental health,
Sure.
we are the least considered and the least cared about, because of the fact that, in my experience, in my life, my creation was never to have my own joy. It was to be the joy for someone else. You know what I mean? So whether it be like with your mother, like whether she has a great husband or a great mate and has a relationship with that mate, when you were conceived to be that joy that would never leave her, because you're gonna love her because you need her, or you have this connection to her. Or with your father, father wants you to be either the athlete that he never was, or to be the continuation of his athleticism, or whatever the case.
Or the continuation of their legacy.
Right. So that's what their joy is. Your joy was never in consideration. Like it was to be the joy for someone else. And it's very hard, because not only is it people don't understand or have the comprehension or the correlation to be able to identify those things,
Right.
but it's in literature, it's written in the stars, it's written in those places, and we just have to get to the place where we have to identify that,
Right.
and not take it personally.
Yeah.
That's a part of the 4 agreements.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't take stuff personally. Just because someone else made you out to be their joy,
Right.
doesn't mean that they are a bad person.
Right.
What it means is like what they use to remedy their pain, their situation, just so happened to be you.
Boy, that's something there. That's powerful. Again, I appreciate you taking out the time to share with us all the way from Atlanta, Georgia, driving down here, taking out this time to talk to the people about pretty much understanding that your mentality to achieve has to look different.
Right.
Because it's your journey. Your journey is going to look much different than someone else's journey. I visited the introduction where we talked about your path to a bachelor's degree,
right.
the many different careers that you actually navigated and became licensed and certified and successfully.
Right.
So a lot of that really just ties back to your approach to doing the work.
Right.
Not really allowing anyone to eliminate you.
Right.
And that's one thing that I think everybody who is listening really needs to understand. If you refuse to be eliminated, you're refusing to be a failure.
Correct.
So your success within what you do, depending on how you define it, is always just a step along the way, just right.
Right. Like I have a saying that I say this all the time, that your breakthrough is right on the other side of you giving up. Like the point where you say, I give up, I promise you, if you keep going just a little bit longer, you will be successful.
We might have to do a part 2 of this, but we'll talk about it off camera. Really mind transformative and really vulnerable, and I appreciate your vulnerability here again, because people don't really know what it takes to make it in certain places.
Right.
So they're guessing.
Right.
They're not feeling comfortable. You can't Google life. Can't do it.
I wish you could.
But you can seek information from someone who's gone through the struggle. And we've talked about the struggle.
Right.
And we've talked about how you were able to overcome the struggle.
Right.
So I believe that this will inspire people who really, like you said, they really are in a situation where they're too busy trying to satisfy others.
Right.
Instead of going after what they were purposed to do.
Right. Yeah.
DuJuan Cole, jack of all trades,
Yes, sir.
master of many, refuses to be eliminated.
Yes, sir.
Transition Talks, Master Class. Thanks for watching.